What's up guys, Xell here, and today we're going to be talking about the new ban list. It's crazy. Tons of cards just got banned. Who knows what's going to happen in the, Western meta. And I'm showcasing a new video format, mainly because I'm lazy and I just don't want to edit videos. I spend a lot of time scripting, end up not filming them. So I'm going to just do these off the cuff, very little editing. I hope you guys enjoy this format. If not, that's too bad because I'm lazy. So yeah, I've got a presentation for you guys to talk about this. So yes, here we go. Bandai update. I created this in 2 seconds with Google Slides, so bear with me here. So yes, Bandai just announced a bunch of bans, and let's talk about what that means for us. So first, what got banned? If you don't know what the cards that were banned were, well, one, it's OP06 Gecko Moria. Everyone wanted this card gone, let's be honest. A very overbearing card in the format. Like, so much of power that was in the meta was just dedicated towards this card, right? Like Lucci, Black Decks, BY Luffy, just all these meta decks were just centered around abusing this card as much as humanly possible because it's a very, very powerful card. And we finally get to see it banned, which is crazy. Again, before coming into this, not a fan of bans, but I can understand. Now, Gecko Moria wasn't the only thing banned. Also, Jinbei, OP07, also got banned. He's the guy who spits out multiple units, more 4-cost units, slowing down Dofi and Boa. But mostly, I think Jinbei banning is mostly aimed at Doflamingo, because he was the premier aggro deck, and certainly cutting this card means that he will at least not flood the board so quickly. Now, another card that was banned was Ice Age. This one was kind of crazy. Ice Age was like the biggest way that Black could easily deal with tall characters on board, right? Like the 10 costs and stuff like that. But it was also just like very versatile because like in matchups like Doflamingo or against Purple Luffy, Ice Age, even though they're not necessarily playing the the highest cost characters, Ice Age was just so efficient at reducing the cost and just like catching you up in tempo in these Black decks. So both Black Moria and Ice Age got banned pretty big. And then the last ban that came around was EB01 Kingdom Come, otherwise known as Raigo. This card was the premier yellow, really just an L, if I'm being honest, removal. It was also used in BY Luffy as well, but yeah, those two decks used Kingdom Come as a way to deal with, again, the big guys of the format. So yeah, now that those bans have been announced, what does that mean? To be honest, no one knows. It's really time to test and figure out what the heck the new format is going to look like. But we can make some guesses about who lost the most in these bans. So obviously, getting two major Black cards, I mean, literally Moria and Ice Age were like 4-ofs in like every Black deck that wasn't Blackbeard, right? So obviously Black decks lost a lot of power. Enel lost a lot of power. Oh, also, I didn't mention BY Luffy. BY Luffy, I'm not sure if it's completely nuked into orbit, but goddamn, it is way worse than it was before. Doflamingo and Boa, obviously, they used the 7 Warlords package, and they were affected by these bans, obviously, as well. I'm not really sure what other decks that were relevant to the meta cared about these particular cards, but these are the very obvious cards and decks that Bandai was trying to address. Now, I think most importantly is to figure out who gains the most after these bans. I think, the obvious thing is green decks for me. Green decks historically have had a lot of problem against the heavy removal that Black brings. And so on top of like these Black cards getting banned, green also gets kind of like crazy good cards in Tashigi and Smoker. These are the new OP10 cards that also help deal with removal in the first place. And now that the premier color of Black, they lose their most efficient ways to get ahead, green decks feel like the obvious sort of like, hey, we're back again. And I think decks like Bonnie and Red Green Smoker are ones that stand to gain the most with these black decks, being sort of cut down a bit. I think other decks that also had weak matchups into these black decks were Shanks and Ploofy. Both of them also had a tougher time dealing with stuff like Lucci, and so I think these two decks also have a lot to gain from these bans. And then I think finally the last most important thing that I think can come back with the current meta is the low to the ground aggro decks. Like Zoro, I think, is like the big one, or even Red Green Law. But I think Zoro in particular stands to gain a lot from this, and even Bello Betty also stands a lot to gain, because those type of decks, they needed a board presence to kind of load the shotgun metaphorically, and then just go in with a bunch of attacks the next turn. But the thing was that against black decks that just removed your board, you never got a chance to really load that shotgun. So that being said, in terms of my predictions here, I think a lot of people assume that Blackbeard was like, oh man, Blackbeard didn't get touched, and so it's going to be a lot, like uncontestedly tier 1. And I actually don't really agree with that, especially right off the bat. Blackbeard has a lot of weaknesses, and you have to remember that a lot of the cards that were banned were actually targeted towards the positive matchups for Blackbeard. Enel, BY Luffy, Smoker less so, he was okay into Blackbeard, but Lucci in particular, like these were decks that really had a weaker matchup into Blackbeard, so Blackbeard just lost a lot of its good matchups. And so I think early on, when people are really testing some of these other decks like Zoro and like an aggro Shanks and Ploofy, like I think Blackbeard's actually going to struggle early on until the meta settles a little bit. Once the meta, I think, closes up a little bit more, and like in my opinion, I think like people are gonna refigure out like optimal lists for the black decks, like Lucci. I don't think that these bans are going to outright kill those decks, but I think they will kill the initial sort of like momentum for them. And so until those lists kind of get cracked, I think these other decks that just kind of naturally already have their lists ready made are going to do far better. And I think when that happens, black decks, when they get refigured out, start to take over the meta again, because I think, again, they will do well into these green decks. They will do well into the low to the ground aggro decks. That's when Blackbeard can come back. So I think like later in OP10, we can see more Blackbeard. But yeah, I think early on, generally speaking, whenever there's a new meta in TCGs, like aggro tends to be like the winning ways, because like control decks have to kind of figure out the angle in which they can attack the meta, and until it sort of settles, it's sort of hard to prepare perfectly for like what the aggro decks are going to bring. And so I think right now, I think Zoro stonks are super high, and I'm also really high on Shanks, because Shanks, typically a lot of people think that Shanks is very good into the green matchups. Generally speaking, historically, red has always been also good into green, because green's like big color identity is really focused around 8-cost Kid, and it's hard to protect 8-cost Kid when they reduce the power of Kid. It's very hard for you to defend multiple attacks into, if they round tabled the 8-cost Kid, it's a 0 power, like you're not going to defend that. And so I think it could Shanks could be just like one of the premier decks. And I just also really like that Shanks just doesn't have like an obvious weakness. He definitely has bad matchups. Like I don't think his Dofi matchup is particularly good. I don't think his Zoro matchup is going to be particularly good, but I think he just has a really well-rounded kit. So I think like for these early regionals that are coming up with Pasadena, I think this is where Shanks can actually sort of shine here. And the only thing is, like, I also think that Shanks also needs to sort of hone in what the proper list will be like. But I do think at some point, these black decks, they will come back. I also don't think Dofi is fully out of the picture yet either. I think he will be less dominant for sure, but he is still very consistent. And the teach starts really don't require you to have Jinbei to have sort of the insane blood, board flood states that people remember Doflamingo for. So Yeah, I don't know. So those are my kind of initial thoughts from the ban list. I am really interested to see how the meta will shake out. Let me know if you think there are other decks that you think can come up in this space. Like, I've been cooking some other stuff. Like, I think Ace, the Ace leader, could be quite good in this meta. I think until the black decks figure out, like, the meta's wide open, and I think that's very fun, and I think I'm very excited to see how this shakes out, even though I'm a little mad now. I have to put in work to go ahead and test all these things, but I do think that we're in a really fun spot here, and I think, you know, we've got a lot of stuff to figure out. So again, let me know in the comments what you guys think are, you know, decks that I've overlooked, or what you think that I'm wrong on. Like, I'm just interested to see, you know, what you guys think about the current meta and the current ban. So let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you guys in another video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Bye.